it goes. Okay, so today we are in section 4.1, and our learning goal is to be able to graph points on a coordinate grid. And so if we're going to graph points on a coordinate grid, the first thing we have to understand is how the coordinate grid is set up and what are all the different vocabulary words that go along with the coordinate grid. So we're going to go ahead and draw a proper coordinate grid. All right, so quadrants, or coordinate grids have 4 quadrants. So I've broken this graph into 4 different pieces. Sometimes you have a 1 quadrant graph. So like if I look at just this right here, okay, we use this a lot in real life because sometimes when you're talking about stuff, there aren't negatives involved. So everything in this quadrant is positive. All of the x's are positive and all of the y's are positive. And this is called quadrant 1. Okay, then going counterclockwise, we have quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, you always move negative on the x-axis before you go up to positives. So in quadrant 2, all the x's are negative, all of the y's are going to be positive. Then you have quadrant 3, and in quadrant 3, you have to go negative x and negative y. So everything in quadrant 3 is going to be negative. And then you have quadrant 4, where quadrant 4, everything on the x is going to be positive, but then you always go down for the y for negative. Okay? You also need to know that this is called the x-axis, and that this one is called the y-axis. Okay, so that should just kind of be a review. I was afraid you might not know what the quadrants were if we didn't review that together. I remember that this one is y because the tail of the y goes down, so I always just think about if that was the tail of the y, it would go straight down. Okay, also in this section, it's going to ask you to be able to name a coordinate point. So if I'm looking at a graph like this, and I put some random points on here. Let's make this point A, make this point C, point B. Can you name those points? Okay, what would A be here? Hannah? 2, 2. Okay, remember this is always your x, this is always your y, and you have to use parentheses. If you don't use parentheses, it's not an ordered pair. Okay, what would the point for C be? Only one person knows. That's it. Oh, there's Martin. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're still graphing. Is that what someone said? 1, 2. I'm getting over 3. And down 2. Sorry, if I need to slow down a little, just tell me. Okay, and what would be the point for B? Connor?
-3, 1.
Perfect.
Jalen Rose, please come to the office. Jalen Rose.
You do. You always go left and right first before you go up or down. Yep, good question. All right, next thing, and this comes off of what I had you guys do for today. They're going to ask you to graph a function again. Okay, so we're going to graph, let's see, graph function y equals 2x minus 5. And I'm going to give you a domain of -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then I'm going to ask you to identify the range. Okay, so what did you guys learn? What did this word domain mean? Hannah? Domain is a fancy way of saying X. So what do you think range is going to be? Fancy way of saying Y. Good. Okay. You should have known that last night the first thing you had to do was create a table and put these values in your table. So I'm going to create a table. And then I'm going to plug each one of these in to my equation and figure out what my Y values are. So if I plug in -2 with 2, that's -4. -4 minus 5 would be -9. -1 times 2 is -2. Minus 5 is -7. 2 times 0 is 0. Minus 5 is -5. Do you see any kind of pattern on this table emerging? Very good. Up by 2's. Do you see anywhere in the equation where that might be coming from? Joey?
The first domain.
The first domain?
Yeah.
Okay, good guess. What about in the equation? Anybody see anything in the equation? Oh, there goes some hands, Ryan. The -5? No, that wouldn't make it increase by 2, Tori. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, this number right here is +2. Okay, if you're counting by ones, you should see a pattern of increasing by 2 each time. Okay, all right, so that would be -3, and then again add 2 more, -1. Okay, so then I'm going to go over to a graph and graph these points. And sometimes when you make a graph, you can't get every single one of them on there, and that's okay. Like on this one, you know, -2, -9 is going to be clear down here. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this one. -1 down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's still kind of off my graph a little. And that's going to happen this chapter a lot. Alright, then I'm going to put my arrows on my X and Y axis. Label that Y, that X. And here's where we're going to start changing it. Okay, we are now going to go ahead and draw in a line. And I'm going to extend the line out. And I'm going to put arrows on both sides, because from here on out we're graphing lines. We are not just graphing points. We are not graphing line segments. We are graphing full lines. So you're going to put that arrow on both ends too. Okay. The last thing it said was to identify the range. So if it says identify the range and it gave you the domain, then you're just going to list what the range is. Okay, so the range on this one is -9, -7, -5, -3, -1. We will do more with this later, where we're going to start talking about some other things. But for right now, you can just label those if it gives you the domain. Okay? Do you guys have any questions on that at all that I can help you with? Seem like it makes sense? Oh, yes, Garrett.
Do you have to have like a certain size graph?
Do you have to have a certain size graph? As we go through chapter 4, we will talk about different types of graphs. You usually want at least 3 points on your graph. So as long as usually you can get at least 3 points, that's okay. Tori. Oh, I thought you were snapping at me. No? At Connor. Okay, bad Connor. All right. Okay, let me see.